But wanted to get to college basketball here. We're about at the midway point for both Creighton and Nebraska. Creighton 13-4, 4-2 in the Big East. They've won their last 4 after dropping their first 2 in conference. Nebraska sitting at also 13-4, but 3-3 in Big Ten play, having lost 2 of their last 3. But sandwiched in there is a great win against Purdue. And so we wanted to see, about 17 games in, we are just past the halfway point in the regular season, about the halfway point if you want to include conference tournaments here, because never know how many games they're going to play in the conference tournament. But we're just past the halfway mark in college basketball this season. And it seems appropriate to kind of, do a health check, a temperature check of these two programs. You want to start with Creighton or Nebraska?
Let's start with Nebraska.
Okay. With Nebraska, here's the resume real quick, right? Okay. They are, again, 13-4, 3-3 in conference. Their best win by far against Purdue. They've also got a Michigan State win, which Michigan State's starting to maybe try and figure things out a little bit. So that might end up being a good win by the end of the season. They have a win against Kansas State, who I think is probably a tournament team, although I don't know. They're probably going to be a bubble team, but I think Kansas State has a chance to make the tournament. And then they got a win over Indiana, who's currently 12-5 overall and 4-2 in the conference. Indiana, at least currently, on pace to be a tournament team as well, although I wasn't blown away by Indiana, but Nebraska played against them really well. Key losses, obviously, you have the loss to Minnesota, which is the worst loss of the season. Minnesota
still could age well.
It could age well. Minnesota's 12-5. They're 3-3 in conference. They're a little bit better than we expected them to be. They're certainly better than they looked in the moment when that loss came. It was a Big Ten road game loss, so not the end of the world. Obviously, they had the big loss against Creighton, and then they got beat up a couple times with Wisconsin and at Iowa. Ironically enough, that Iowa loss may end up aging the worse.
I think so, too, because they're a team that sits in the middle of the pack. They have a lot of boom nights, but also
a lot of bust
nights.
Yeah.
But that Wisconsin one will be fine.
Yeah, the Wisconsin loss isn't bad.
Wisconsin's going to make it into the tournament like that.
Top 25 on the road. Like, it didn't look great, right? The visuals of it didn't look great, but
what's funny about it is Nebraska played a good game.
Offensively.
They had a really good shooting performance, but even defensively, if Wisconsin didn't shoot 50% from downtown, and if Nebraska could guard the perimeter a smidge better, that wouldn't have that would have been a lot closer. 20-point loss.
It would have been a lot closer. I don't know if they would have won, but it would have been a lot closer. But again, it's a top 25 loss on the road in conference, and nobody cares. Like, that's not a bad loss. That game actually bumps your RPI up. Like, that's fine, or your net up, I guess now. Speaking of net, I want to give the net rankings here.
Well, as you pull those up, I want to say one more thing about Nebraska.
Absolutely.
They're 13-4 right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have told anyone that this team would be 13-4 at this point in the season with the win against the number 1 team in the country, you could expect 100% of people to take that.
Absolutely would have taken it.
16 wins last year, 10 wins the year before, 7 wins the year before, 8 wins the year before. They have 13 wins right now.
Mm-hmm.
And still have the season to go. And what? You need 7 to get into the NCAA tournament?
I'd feel good about 7 more, and you're in. Yeah.
You're taking that all day long.
Absolutely.
If you were giving a letter grade to this team, well, you can't spell B without Nebraska, plus some other letters. So let's give them a B+.
So in the KenPom, they're 49. In the net rankings, they are 53. KenPom has them favored to win in 8 games left, and they are basically coin flips in 3 more. So this is a team that those are 10 viable wins on the schedule. You only have to get 7 of them. That's even including like Ohio State as a sure on the road as a sure loss, which I don't necessarily buy. That's including
not the way they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. That's including like Maryland as a possible loss. Like there's wins in there as well that I think Nebraska could possibly get. So you've got 10 to maybe 11 winnable games in there, and I'm taking like Illinois on the road. I'm taking that off the table. Like that's a really tough game, top 10 road opponent. Like, that's a really tough game. So I'm taking some of those away. But you win 7 out of those 11 games, you're in good shape. You win 6, I still think you have a shot, especially if you win in your first round of the NCAA, or not the NCAA, the Big Ten tournament.
But things become contingent on how you perform.
If you win 7 on the
stage.
if you win 7 on the way out here, you're in really good shape. 7 of their last 14 is what they have left. You go 500 on the way out, you're good to go. You gave them a B.
I said plus.
Oh, B plus.
Because I said you have to add more letters to Nebraska in order to
fair.
Nebraska.
I'm kind of on the border for Nebraska between. I think I'm going to go A minus here,
and that's an okay grade too. And if they would have lost to Purdue, I bet you would have fallen into the B's.
Yeah. And if they had beaten either Wisconsin or Iowa, I probably bump them up to just to a regular A.
Yeah, I think a B plus is kind of like perfect for this team, though, because of some of those losses that you already touched on. The loss against Minnesota should not have happened.
Right. The Iowa one as well. Again, both Big Ten road games, but those are games that you probably need to win if you're an NCAA tournament team. The Minnesota one is their only loss outside the KenPom top 50. Their other losses, Creighton is 15 in KenPom, Wisconsin's 9, Iowa's 43. Those are all very reasonable and explainable losses there. The Minnesota one sticks out a little bit, and that's definitely one they want back. But
because they had it. They had it majority of that game. I mean, you have the lead going into half. Minnesota's without their best player. It was set up to be a W, and Nebraska got too comfortable.
They fumbled it
and allowed the Golden Gophers to come back in that game.
They fumbled that one for sure. And there's really no way around it, and that's fine. You can't go back and change it. I mean, I'm sure Creighton would go back and change that UNLV game if they could. That's the one that really sticks out for them.
Yeah. We can get into them.
Yeah, we'll hit on Creighton at 8:30. We've got a little bit of time in the 8:30 hour, or in the 8:30 time slot. But coming up next, we're going to talk to our old friend Damon Benning. Want to get his thoughts on some of the NFL games from this weekend, as well as the kind of coaching carousel that we've seen start spinning again here in the last week or so. Seems like it's maybe starting to settle down in college, but NFL, I got some question marks as to where some of these teams are going to go.
Even with the Steelers, DB's team, and Mike Tomlin walking off the set when he was about to be asked
about his contract. Interesting stuff going on in the NFL. Coming up next, we'll talk to our friend Damon Benning here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, of course, on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.